The Road, directed by John Hillcoat, is one of the most faithful cinematic adaptations of a novel that's been produced. The source material is treated respectfully. Scenes and moments of major character development were transferred beautifully to the screenplay, and in my opinion, any deviations that were made from the script to the novel fit the pacing and direction of the movie beautifully. The reason I bring up these differences is because the scene I want to discuss from The Road is one that actually differs from the novel rather significantly. To illustrate my thoughts on this, I'm also going into some depth regarding the themes from another Cormac McCarthy adaptation, the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men. Upon rewatching these films one after another, I came to realize that Cormac McCarthy outlines several of his worldviews on fatherhood and legacy in both novels, with consistent imagery, making the stories more intertwined than I had previously understood. To start, I'm going to dissect the scene from The Road. The scene I'm referring to immediately follows the fireside conversation between the man, played by Viggo Mortensen, and the old man, played by Robert Duvall. The man and the boy find themselves having wandered into a cannibal camp, where from a distance they happen to witness the murder of a woman and a child by the members of the cannibal camp. The man lifts the boy in his arms and the two begin to run away, but what follows is an earthquake that shakes the decaying forest to its core, causing ancient pines to topple about them, narrowly being crushed several times. This sequence of events didn't happen in the book. Originally, the man and the boy came upon a fire spit that had been used to cook the fetus of a newborn child. In an interview, John Hillcoat stated that the reasoning for removing this scene was that it was simply overkill and redundant to showcase, with the audience already having experienced cannibalism in a few forms already. Having read the novel and seen the film, I have to agree. The single page in the novel with the eating of an unborn child adds to the story only in what is happening in the heads of the man and the boy. Many times, in film adaptations of critically acclaimed novels, there seems to be an unfortunate amount of detail and necessary plot that gets lost. However, there are also many examples of novels that derive their key narration from internal thoughts that the protagonists are having. This makes translating the story to film sometimes difficult, not in that the audience can't be trusted to derive internal thoughts from excellent acting, but rather when the phrase "show, don't tell" is one of your guiding artistic principles, you run into a lot of redundancies. In film, many times, less is more. It's why I try to separate film adaptations from the novels they're based on, see them as two separate art forms based on the same story, and judge them independently. Because many times, nothing will ever look as good to you as what you imagined in your head while you were reading it in a book. With the exception of the small earthquake in the beginning, in The Road, the earth is still and dead, raging fires being some of the only movement we're shown. I believe that this scene, at the surface level, was meant as a reminder that the dangers of the post-apocalyptic world are not regulated to cannibals and starvation, but that the very ground they stand on seems to be giving away as well. But this scene's true beauty comes in looking at what happens immediately before and immediately after. In the conversation with the old man, he tells of his foresight in predicting the apocalypse.
There were warnings. Yeah, some people thought it was a con. I always believed in it.
You try to get ready for it?
What would you do? Even if you knew what to do, you wouldn't know what to do.
Maybe God would know.
God would know what? God would know what? If there's a God up there, he would have turned it back on us by now. And whoever made humanity will find no humanity here. No, sir.
The old man feels that even if there is a God, they have turned their back on the remains of humanity for their depravity, a world now plagued by cannibalism, rape, and murder. Then, after a short montage of travel, the man and the boy find themselves in another cannibalist den. Almost immediately after escaping, it feels as though the heavens are shaking the earth almost in response to this terrible act. Not divine retribution by any means, but instead a coincidence of events that conjures up imagery of God's wrath in every holy book ever written. After narrowly being killed by the falling trees, the two are indeed safe. The cannibals are gone, and the earth is again still. Then we are beside a fire, the boy asleep, being tended to by his father. The film shows us murals on the walls of the church that they have taken refuge in, paintings of ancient men in pairs of two lit by the gentle flame. There's two ways you could look at this scene. One is that the earthquake was, in some way, a divine force that separated the man and the boy from the cannibals, leading them to a church to take refuge in. The other being that the events are simply coincidence, that in the world of the road, the concept of divine intervention seems a bit far-fetched with how things have gone. I personally believe that it was vague enough to let audiences extract what they felt the meaning was, which is why I decided to speak about the earthquake scene in length, because that scene is the most direct contribution to the story that the filmmakers made, separate from Cormac McCarthy, with the only other major exception being the inclusion of flashbacks of the man and his wife in better times. I personally love how this scene represents the collaborative nature of film production and writing, and I think it adds a great deal to the themes that Cormac McCarthy likes to play with. In my analysis of this scene, I also came to a conclusion about another film that I had recently watched, the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men. The scene in question is at the end of the movie, where the defeated Tommy Lee Jones has his monologue about the dream he had had the previous night.
It was like we was both back in the older times, and I was a horseback, going through the mountains of a night, going through this pass in the mountains. It was cold, and there was snow on the ground. He rode past me and kept on going, never said nothing going by, just rode on past. And he had his blanket wrapped around him and his head down. When he rode past, I seen he was carrying fire in a horn, the way people used to do, and I could see the horn from the light inside of it, about the color of the moon. And in the dream, I knew that he was going on ahead. And he's fixing to make a fire somewhere out there in all that dark and all that cold. And I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there.
You have to watch out for the bad guys. You have to just keep carrying the fire.
In the dream, he too was following his father, though this was on horseback through the mountains at night. I noticed that Cormac McCarthy again used the imagery of carrying the fire in this context, a sort of overarching statement upon the role of fatherhood in young men's lives. But the symbolism is still the same. I believe that a great deal of Cormac McCarthy's beliefs on the roles of fathers in their children's lives are evident here, as keepers of light in a dark world, moving on ahead with their children behind them. In them, they carry the fire of civilization, truth, responsibility, and compassion, totems to be eventually handed down when the children arrive at the place where the old men stop. And their hope must be that when they do, their following children will too carry the fire.
And are you carrying the fire?
You know what?
Carrying the fire.
You're kind of weirded out, aren't you, kid?
Well, are you?
Yeah, I'm carrying the fire.
I can come with you.
Yes, you can.